My hands. They tell a story before I even open my mouth. These hands are cracked, lined and swollen from years of work. But they were once small, soft and full of dreams. They carried bread home from the bakery on Bloomfield Avenue. They clutched school books that smelled of chalk and dust. They clung to my mother's skirt when the nights grew cold, and they held my little brother's fingers the night he slipped away from us. I was born here, in New Jersey, in a cramped apartment above a corner grocery store. The walls were thin enough that you could hear the neighbors' arguments, the baby crying in the next flat, the sounds of the city never sleeping. We didn't have much, not money, not comfort, not even heat on the worst nights. But we had each other, and in those days, that meant survival. My father worked at the factory. He left every morning before the sun and came home with his clothes reeking of grease, and his lungs coughing out black dust. My mother sewed clothes at the kitchen table, her needle flashing under the weak bulb above us, her fingers raw from thread and fabric. I used to sit at her feet, listening to the soft hum of her voice as she sang old songs while she worked. We were poor, but as children we made games out of scraps. My brothers and I played stickball in the street with broom handles and rubber balls, our shoes full of holes, our knees bruised. We laughed as if the world was ours. Happiness, you see, can live even in the smallest corners, even in the cracks of hunger and hardship. But happiness is fragile. One winter the cold was so bitter it seemed to settle inside our bones. My youngest brother fell ill. Pneumonia. We had no doctor, no medicine, nothing but prayers whispered into the night. I sat beside his bed, holding his tiny hand in mine, watching the rise and fall of his chest, slower, softer, until it stopped. I remember the silence that followed, the way the air in that room felt heavy, suffocating. My mother wept quietly into her hands. My father stared at the floor, his face stone. And me. I sat frozen, a child who had just discovered that love could be stolen away, that life could be cruel without reason. That night I made myself a promise. I didn't speak it aloud, but I felt it burn inside me. I will survive. No matter what this world takes from me, I will not let it break me. That promise became my armor. It has carried me through every storm since. After my brother's death, I carried that promise inside me like a secret flame. I grew up quickly. Childhood had no room to linger when the rent was due, when the cupboards were nearly bare, when your parents' shoulders bent lower every day under the weight of survival. By 16, I was already working. I cleaned houses in Montclair, houses with carpets so thick my feet sank into them, kitchens that smelled of butter and cinnamon, shelves lined with books I dared not touch. The women of those houses barely looked at me when they handed me their lists. To them, I was a shadow passing through their world, my hands scrubbing away their mess while they sipped coffee in porcelain cups. Still I scrubbed, I polished, I folded sheets until my knuckles cracked. Because every dollar meant food on our table. But even in those years there was light. His name was Anthony. He worked at the docks in Hoboken, hauling crates with arms strong from labor, yet his voice was soft when he spoke to me. He had hair that never stayed in place, always falling into his eyes, and a smile that made the world feel less heavy. He would walk me home after long shifts, carrying my bag as though it were treasure. With him, I discovered something I had only read about in cheap novels: love. We married young. My dress was borrowed, the hem slightly too short, and our wedding feast was nothing more than sandwiches and lemonade in the church basement. But to us, it was a celebration brighter than the grandest ballroom. We laughed, we danced, we dreamed of a future we believed we could build together. For a time, life gave me peace. I would wake to the sound of Anthony's footsteps in the kitchen, the smell of coffee brewing. He would place his rough hands over mine and say, "Rosa, one day we'll have our own house, a small one, maybe with a garden." I believed him. I wanted nothing more. But dreams can be stolen as swiftly as they are made. The draft notice came. Vietnam. Anthony kissed me on the stoop of our apartment building, his hands trembling though he tried to hide it. "I'll come back," he whispered. I held on to those words as tightly as I held on to him. He wrote letters when he could, pages filled with heat and dust and longing. I carried them in my apron pocket, close to my heart, reading them until the ink began to fade. But then the letters stopped. A week passed, then a month, and then came the knock. 2 men in uniform, hats pressed against their chests, eyes lowered, voices solemn. I was 21 years old, and already a widow. The world did not stop for my grief. The factory whistles still blew, children still played in the streets, neighbors still gossiped in the stairwells, but my world had ended. I woke each morning to an empty bed, to silence where his laughter once lived. Grief hollowed me, but it did not destroy me. I remembered the promise I had made as a child, to survive. And so I carried Anthony with me, not as a wound, but as a flame. It burned, yes, but it also gave me light. After Anthony, I thought love would never touch me again. But life has its own plans. I found myself a mother, not once, but twice. And with those children in my arms, the world demanded more from me than I thought I could give. The 70s were hard years. I worked in a textile factory in Paterson, the air thick with dust, and the roar of machines that drowned out thought. We wore masks, but still the fibers clung to our throats, leaving us coughing into the night. My body ached each day, as if it would double its age. Yet I went back, shift after shift, because 2 little mouths waited at home. Motherhood is sacrifice. I skipped meals so my children could eat. I patched shoes until the soles were nothing but layers of stitches. Winters were the worst. When the heat failed, I bundled them in every blanket we owned, holding them close, telling stories so they would forget the cold. It was not only poverty that weighed on me, but humiliation. Standing in line with food stamps, feeling the eyes of strangers pierce my back, hearing whispers I was never meant to hear. Poverty strips you bare, not just your wallet, but your dignity. And yet, I learned to swallow bitterness, like medicine. Some betrayals cut deepest. A cousin who borrowed money, swore he'd return it, then vanished. A friend who smiled to my face, then mocked my struggles behind closed doors. Trust became a fragile thing. Still, I carried these wounds in silence, because my children needed strength, not despair. I gave them what I could, not wealth, but lessons. I told them never to measure themselves by what they owned, but by how they stood in hard times. I told them strength was not fists or fury. It was endurance. It was waking up each day and refusing to be broken. There were nights I thought I could not go on. But then I'd see a report card pinned to the fridge with proud little hands, or hear laughter echo through our small kitchen, and I knew the sacrifices were worth it. Every prayer whispered over their sleeping heads was answered in small victories. Sacrifice carved me into stone, but it also gave me purpose. Without it, I would have crumbled under the weight of my own grief. As time moved forward, the world began to shift. My children grew, their shoulders broad with responsibility, their dreams stretching further than I ever dared. One by one, they stepped into lives I could only have imagined. College diplomas, decent jobs, families of their own. With each success, I remembered those who once doubted me. The neighbors who whispered I would never raise children alone. The employers who paid me less because I was a woman. The so-called friends who turned their backs when I was drowning. I remembered them all. I could have filled my heart with hate. I could have dreamed of vengeance. But hatred only poisons the one who carries it. I chose a different path. My revenge was to endure, to live long enough to see my children succeed, to fill my kitchen with the laughter of grandchildren, to prove that I was stronger than every cruelty that tried to silence me. Every smile at my table was a strike against despair. Every diploma, every wedding, every new baby. These were my victories. Poverty wanted to crush me. Betrayal wanted to harden me. Loneliness wanted to consume me. But I survived, and survival became my rebellion. I built when others expected me to crumble. I chose kindness where cruelty was expected. I stood taller, even when my bones ached, because endurance was my answer. Hope became my weapon. Love became my shield. That, my child, was my revenge. Not a blade, not a curse, not a cruel word, but life itself. Life lived fully, stubbornly, with every scar turned into strength. Now the days move slowly. My steps are smaller. My hands tremble. My eyes cloud. But I am not ashamed of these years. Every wrinkle on my face is a story. Every scar is proof that I have lived. I sit in this little house, the evening light spilling across the walls, and I feel the years pressing gently around me. The streets outside have changed. New voices, new faces, new languages. But the echoes of my life remain within these walls. The laughter of children, the sobs of grief, the quiet hum of prayer. When I look at my children, grown and strong, when I hear the footsteps of my grandchildren, full of life, I know it was all worth it. They are the proof that sacrifice was not in vain. They are the continuation of every prayer, every promise, every sleepless night. My revenge was never in anger. My revenge was survival. I outlived the pain. I silenced the doubt. I turned my wounds into roots, and those roots hold this family steady. That is the justice I claimed. That is the victory I leave behind. And so, when my time comes, I will go without fear. I have carried grief, yes, but I have also carried joy. I have been beaten down, but I have always risen. If there is one lesson my story must leave behind, it is this: do not let the world harden your heart. Let survival be your revenge. Let love be your weapon. And let hope be the fire that carries you through the darkest nights. This is my life, my truth, and now it is yours to carry forward.